So we understand what SHA-1 is, and we also understand the reason for Git. The best way to learn, however, is by doing. Let's go through a relatively simple interactive session. We'll create a Git repository, which is conventionally referred to as a repo, by typing the following sequence of commands on your EC2 box. What this will do is it will create a Git repository. It will set up your username. It will also, create a file, add it, update that file, and show the logs and all the differences in your file editing. In particular, we can actually do git log, and we can actually look at the SHA-1 hash of individual files and pull out files, all the way from within Git. And so everything is tracked with the SHA-1 identifier. Every alteration you make to the source code tree is tracked and be addressed or manipulated with the SHA-1. And so without further ado, let's just run through these commands. So we've done apt-get install git core already. So which git will produce a usable thing. In this case, we're not going to be using any special command sequences, so let's turn that off for a second. So we're going to, make dir my repo, okay, cd into my repo, and then what we'll do is we will config So, strictly speaking, the first two commands weren't necessary, but they're useful if you're doing it for the very first time. Tap git init. We've just created a repository. Right now, at the very beginning, there's nothing in the repository. We're going to now add a file, create a file, and then add that file. This uses echo, the command that we looked at last time. Echo-E allows us to include a \n in there. And we redirect it with stdout to file.txt. We're going to add that file as follows. Now there's a change to be committed. A new file was added to the repository. It hasn't yet actually been, Git has various stages, so this is staged for a commit, but you might want to add more files before you actually create an official commit. But here's what we did. We just did it with one file. We created our first commit. It's got the SHA-1 hash, a SHA-1 hash that begins with A22-4D1F. It's on the so-called master branch. In this commit, one file was changed. We made two insertions, which were additions, and this is the permissions on the file. 100644. You can Google that, but basically it means that we can read and write, and anybody else can read the file. We also added a commit message, added first file like this. If we type git log, we see there is one commit that was made. Here is the file, and here is the commit hash. As before, it starts with A22-4D1F. We configured the author, and we've got the timestamp, and so that's the commit for Git. Now we're going to make an edit to the file. Git detects that we made an edit, that file.txt was modified, and this change is not yet being staged for a commit. Let's go ahead and look at what the difference was. So the difference is that we added a line over here, but I'm using the bash keyboard shortcuts that we talked about in a previous lecture. If we pass in the color option, that makes it more apparent what's being added. A plus in green is an added line over the previous version of the file. This was the previous hash of the file, the SHA-1 hash. This is the next hash, and the difference between these, the version A and version B of the file, is that version B has line 3 added, like so. So now we just added, a new commit where we added this to the repository. We said we're going to add a new line to the file, and now we've got 2 commits. If we do git log -p, okay, we will actually see not just the commit, but exactly what happened. In this commit, we added line 3, and in the first commit, we added the file itself, which had the contents of line 1 and line 2. And you can see that in living color as shown like this. Now, if we want to actually delete a line, here's how that would look. Deleting a line is if you pass the -- color option colored in red, then we added one more line in green. So this is how you can look at the series of changes to a file. As you initialize it, you add lines, you subtract lines. This is kind of the evolution of code, and this gives you a sense of how Git works. A frequent operation is when you're doing something like lstree, or you're working with the SHA-1 hash of a commit. You can actually work with that as follows. You often will copy and paste a SHA-1 hash. Watch what happens if we do lstree. We can see the individual blob, this file, itself has a SHA-1. And we can pull this object out of the internals of Git based on the SHA-1 hash over here. If we instead did it for an older revision, we can pull this out over here as well. So in this manner, Git basically gives us the past versions of every file that was ever in the repository and all of its history, and all we need to do is tap a few commands to extract that. There's other ways, of course, to pull out files from the history, but this is the one that's based on the SHA concept. So that's the point. Git tracks everything with a SHA identifier. Every alteration you make to the source tree is tracked and can be uniquely addressed, and this allows very interesting computations using Git. And so with this session, you sort of again created a repository, created a file, added that file, and then committed it, made a commit out of it. You modified the file and then made a commit with the modifications, and you looked at the Git log. Okay, so good. That's your first Git session.